Hi, everybody, and welcome to She Rises, another episode. And I'm so happy to be with you again. If you don't know me, I am Leslie Kuster. I am the best-selling author of 7 Keys to 7 Figures, the Women Entrepreneur's Guide to Money and Freedom. And if you haven't checked out a copy yet, I am still giving away bonuses when you go to the page 7 keys to 7 figures book.com, and I'll have it strolling there in a moment because I am giving away there some really good information, a manifestation video, something I use all the time to make things happen in my own business, and also one of my modules for my course on action, because I know how important the action part is. We all have these ideas and we want to do things, but then we get stuck, don't we? Because there's so many things to do. And the action module will help you lay it out and teach you exactly what to do so you don't get overwhelmed. So today's guest, I'm really excited to share with you. It's a topic I've never, ever even thought about, to tell you the truth, which is on crisis management. So our guest is Deborah Sherman. She owns Jack Tracy Marketing. It's a PR and crisis communications firm in Denver that helps businesses and entrepreneurs build their brand, position them as thought leaders, and connect them with major media for worldwide publicity. Before that, she was an investigative journalist for NBC, ABC, and CBS News around the country. Her work was awarded 13 Emmy and 3 Edward R. Murrow Awards for excellence and impact. And after that, get this, she served as the Communications and Community Outreach Director for the FBI in Colorado and Wyoming. She holds certificates from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and FEMA in emergency management and crisis communication. So I am so happy to bring onto the stage Deborah Sherman. Deborah, thank you so much for being here on She Rises. We're so happy to have you.
Leslie, thank you. I'm just so excited to be here, and I'm glad to meet you.
So you've had quite the career. I mean, that was quite a resume I just read. But you are an entrepreneur now, aren't you?
Yeah, a lot like you. I mean, you started several different businesses, and you have a successful clothing line and books. And so that's what I'm doing now too. I'm taking all the skills that I learned in 20 years of investigative reporting and public relations, working in crisis communications, and I'm trying to help businesses with that, trying to help them really be prepared for when something happens, and not only that, but teach them how to communicate with the journalists and media early on, and how to really build their reputation. Because it's interesting, people like to, I want to say, rag on the media a lot, right? They're constantly saying, "Oh, the media sucks," but when they actually do polls, when you've been on NBC or ABC or CBS, people really hold a lot of value to that, and they trust you more as a business. So if you can add those lines, as seen on TV, as seen on ABC News or NBC, or in, Entrepreneur Magazine, or Wall Street Journal, then you gain a lot of credibility with customers.
Oh my God. I think everybody listening to this and everybody who has a business would just dream on being on NBC or being in Entrepreneur Magazine. So is that what you do? Is that what you do? Do you help women or men entrepreneurs get better media?
Yeah, it's funny. All of my clients right now do happen to be women. It's not that I don't help men. Maybe that just isn't a priority to them. I'm not sure. But yeah, so because I've been on both sides of the camera, right, asking the questions and then being interviewed and helping people be interviewed, I'm able to really place them on different media. So what we do is we'll take your business, let's say it's a new line of clothing. And then we're going to brainstorm all of these terrific ideas. And then I will pitch reporters for you. And so Then they will, interview you, and I'll prepare you for the interview if it's on TV or if it's in print, and help you develop those relationships so that in the future you can just continue doing that yourself. But it's a lot of fun, and again, it brings people a lot of credibility. And it gets the word out too, because if you think about it, Leslie, everybody spends so much money advertising on Facebook and LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, all of those places, and they're only reaching a certain target audience, right? But when you get in a magazine, you just never know who's going to pick it up, or when you're in the newspaper. So you're really opening up your business and your product or your services to people you never even imagined you might meet. And so that's another great reason that people should try to get on the news.
Do you take on clients who have been in business for 5 years, or they have a certain revenue? Or I guess what I'm asking is, if you are also a new entrepreneur, you have a new business, are you ready to do media at that time? Or is that something that you should like put off until you're more established?
I guess it all depends on your story. And that's what we're really doing here. We're telling your story, whether it's like you, Leslie, where you were in your 50s and you're like, what am I going to do? I know I'm meant to do more. And that's a compelling story, right? How you reimagined and reinvented and transformed your whole life. That's a great story that I would tell, even though you were a new entrepreneur. And what that might do is then bring people to your product, because people would connect and resonate with your story. And so a journalist might say, that's a great story. It doesn't matter that she's just starting up. And of course, as you can imagine, sometimes we see all these new products, right, on the news. Let's say Apple's new VR stuff, right? Although they've been around a long time, but that's a new product. So, sometimes I think it's better to just jump in and try to swim than waiting to be established. Although if you are established, that never hurts. In fact, that's always a good thing.
Can someone do media on their own, meaning they don't need to hire somebody like you, or is it much better to just hire an agency first?
Well, I think people can do it on their own, and that's another part of the training that I do. So we teach you what is a story, first of all. What do reporters want? What are they looking for? Then what's your story? You want to have, we all call it the elevator speech, but you really want to highlight exactly what you do in the first couple of sentences. And, I've had people, as a journalist, I would get pages and pages or emails that just wouldn't end on information. And honestly, I just didn't have time for that. It was frustrating. It was overwhelming. I might file it away in a to read this later because so many other things were happening. And then, of course, I may never get to that. So I teach you how to really sum up your story, hit the highlights, just like you would call your friend Leslie. And you'd say, you wouldn't give this big, long, boring backstory. You'd be like, guess what? I just sold my 100th widget, right? You'd go right to the point. You'd tell the most exciting thing, or you'd be like, I met this great guy, or whatever, right? Or my kid just made the baseball team. So I teach you how to write emails and pitches just like that. And then another thing we do is we show you how to find the reporter. You can't just email blast reporters all over the country. First of all, you want to start in your local area, right? Get some local media coverage first. And you need to know who you're going to email. So for example, you're not going to send a pitch about your new business to the sports reporter or the weather reporter or the education reporter. So I show you how to find the right person to email. And then I show you how to research them a little. So what reporters will tell you, and I would tell you this too, is if you write me a personal email like, hey, Deborah, I just saw that you did a big investigation about airport security. Well, I have a new story about travelers on airplanes who, this is a way they can protect their goods and keep their things safe when they, go to the restroom or whatever. So you want to piggyback on something the reporter's already done before. And the way to do that is to kind of search them out on social media, see what they've been covering, see what they've been talking about. So we teach you how to do that too. And then we also show you how to do the follow-up. So you don't just send the email and then give up, right? You keep trying. You're like, oh, well, if this isn't quite, what you're looking for, journalist, what would be helpful next time? Do you have a new beat that you're talking about? What kind of experts are you looking for? So we show you how to follow up, how often to follow up, when to give up. But, we have many stories where, even me knowing so many reporters across the country, I'll pitch a client and they just don't have time. They've got other stories on their plate, and pitch them and pitch them and pitch them. And then 6 months later, they'll be like, okay, we're ready. And of course your client has to be ready that day. But so you really want to be determined in everything. So the bottom line to answer your question is, yes, you can do it. There's just a little strategy to it. That's what we teach you how to do. And we even, just for simplicity's sake, because one of the things that takes the longest time is really finding the right reporters and then finding their contact information and finding their phone number, right? That takes a lot of time. So what we do for people is we just will sell you some media contacts, like 20 media contacts in your market. And of course, I will make sure that it's the right person, that it's all the phone numbers work, all the emails work, and stuff like that. So we try to make it as easy for you as possible. Although if people want to do that work themselves, they can do that too. It's just really time consuming.
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was what I wanted to know next. Because you mentioned the important thing is to identify who the reporter is, not just send a business story to somebody in sports or whatever. And I was going to ask you, so how do you find that reporter? So you actually have a service though, where I can say to you, for example, my book right now, and I'm in Florida, in Delray Beach area. You will be able to sell me a list of TV stations or magazines or whatever, radio, I assume, too, that is in my area with the right reporter who would cover something like what it is that I speak about. Is that right?
Exactly. So what I do is I actually use a service, gather, every reporter in the market, whether it's a website, because, like you have websites and live stream all the time. And so that's a way of getting your word out too, whether it's a podcast or a newspaper or a magazine or radio or television, or newspaper, of course. It really depends on what you're looking for. And then I take that huge list and then really cull it down. I literally go to every single reporter and I make sure that, this is the right reporter. Oh, this reporter's not even here anymore, because those lists get old pretty quickly. So people move on. They change beats. Maybe they're promoted, they do something else. And so then I also, make sure they're there, make sure everything's working, make sure they're still covering that subject before we send it to you. So we send people perfect media lists depending on what you're looking for. And I always advise, and this is for network too, like let's say you're looking to get on the NBC Today show or Good Morning America, ABC or CBS This Morning. They really want to know that you've been on media before, so that your first rodeo is not going to be on network news and maybe you freeze up or you're not comfortable. So that's why it's really good to get the local news kind of under your belt first.
Yeah, I love that advice, to start local, identify who the right reporter is and pitch to them. I love that. So let's switch a little bit to crisis management and what you do, because that's so interesting. I was thinking about my own business and in clothing, women's clothing, children's clothing. When I was doing children's clothing, there was a lot of scare and issues around pajamas. They had to be fireproof, they had to be tight, they had to be this, they had to be that. And so I sell on Amazon, and Amazon requires that I have $1 million liability insurance policy against crises that could happen. So, and also with my business during COVID, any kind of, and Black Lives Matter, and during that time, any kind of comments at that time really triggered a lot of crises. And I actually faced a one, short-lived, but I did face one. So can you maybe share some examples of companies or individuals you've worked with that have had crisis problems and what you do about it.
Sure, but first, I'd love to hear what happened to you and how did you handle that?
Well, I just handled it by deleting my post. That's how
Oh,
I handled it.
okay, okay.
Basically, it was a post and it hit some buttons from other people. And I started getting phone calls. I was in Switzerland at the time because I lived in Switzerland for 20 years and friends of mine were calling from the US. Also, I just want to mention that I was in Switzerland, so not really exactly knowing what was going on in the United States at that time of Black Lives Matter exactly, and how delicate every word was at that time. And I was getting phone calls from friends like, delete the post immediately, your business is going to
Mhm.
be ruined, and all this kind of stuff. And I just thought, okay, I will. So I did. And that was my experience, and that's how I handled it, and everything was fine, and we went on. But I, at the time, heard of another clothing company that was, I forgot the name of it was a big clothing company. And they were, they were just ruined from a
Yeah.
comment they made. Anyway, back to you, Deborah. That was my experience.
Well, right, and it's interesting you mentioned clothing companies. There have been several examples recently in the news, but I mean, nobody wants to deal with crisis communication early, which is too bad because, first of all, a crisis can happen so quickly, right, and so easily with just a wrong post, as you experienced, or a tweet, right? It could be an active shooter. It could be a fire. It could be a natural disaster. A tornado comes through and tears down your manufacturing plant. So and these days things happen so quickly and they go viral, as you know. I mean, I'm so glad you had a good experience at the end there, and that just by removing the post, that's resolved that. A lot of times that doesn't happen. So, I'll talk about one. I don't know if you remember this. Let's see here. So, United Airlines, and this was a few years ago. So, they had to put on 3 or 4 employees, and so what they did is they asked people, here's a free pass. Please get off. Well, nobody wanted to get off, so they forcibly removed passengers. I don't know if you remember this, but in particular, this one guy, they brought in security. They literally dragged this guy off of the airplane, and of course, somebody took video of it. And of course, it went viral immediately. And then, unfortunately, the United CEO did not respond well at all. He immediately sent out a statement saying, this is upsetting for all of this, and we had to reaccommodate the passengers. Well, that awful statement, reaccommodating passengers by dragging them off, their United stocks shares fell $800 million. Of course, they were sued. They made this huge settlement with the passenger. But I mean, that was a nightmare. It was just a disaster for them. And it happened so quickly. So, you have to really, there's a few steps, and I want to share those with you because I think you're going to like this. Let me go here. And I actually have some steps that I think would help you and other businesses. So first of all, if you ever have had a crisis communication playbook, I really think you need to pull that out in a time like this. But the first thing you need to do is, determine what happened and when, which is exactly what you did, Leslie. Where it happened, it was on social media, who's involved, how did it happen, and what is currently being done. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to determine what your threat is. Okay. And that's going to then set the next course of action. So, what's really important, what you do next is you really should have some people helping you. Of course, if you're a solopreneur like yourself, maybe at the time, you maybe didn't have a team that you could call on, but you do want to, if you're an established business, really notify your executives and lawyers, put somebody in charge of speaking, and that's okay if it's you. And then put everything else on hold. Don't issue any more posts. Don't do anything else in your company until this is totally dealt with. You also want to monitor the media, but what's most important than that is this. You need to immediately send out a first response statement. That's what we call it. It's called a first response statement. And that is something that you want to get out within 15 minutes, if at all possible, of learning about what just happened. So like in United's case, I don't think they replied. I think it took them at least 24 hours to reply, maybe even 2 days to reply. Okay. Which is awful, because as you know, with social media, everybody jumps in. There's no other voice to stop the criticism and to stop the misinformation and the false information. So you want to send out what I always call a first response statement. And that's basically saying, hey, I acknowledge exactly what happened. Like we see that, there was a fire, or say something like that. We want you to know that the fire department is here, the police department is here, or in a case with social media, we saw that really bad post. We have removed it. We see what you're saying about it. We acknowledge that. And we're going to put out another statement very soon. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you also want to reply on the same platform that it happened. So in United's case, that was like a Facebook post. So they probably should have replied on Facebook simultaneously with sending out a press release, right? So that they can get where the story's happening. And then you always want to follow up. But first of all, Leslie, that first response, it says to people, look, I see you, I hear your concerns, and I'm in charge. Like, I am in charge. Nobody else can now speak for us, because there have been plenty of cases where, oh my gosh, businesses don't reply for a couple of days, which is outrageous to me in this day and age. They don't reply for a couple of days, and people make up fake X accounts or fake, Facebook accounts and start speaking as them. I mean, that's happened more times than not. And then reporters will grab that information, which is crazy. So, and then you always want to let people know more information is coming. So they're like, okay, well, this person's now in charge. We now know where to get the next information, and then continually share that information with them.
Wow. That's really amazing tips. And you're right. It has to be done like right away.
Right away.
Yeah. It has to be done right away. And in a little bit, it reminded me of being in like a relationship with somebody as well, which is, instead of being, you did this, instead of being like, well, you did this, you're like, I understand that what you're saying, and that you're saying that you are upset with me, right, for something I did, and I acknowledge and I hear it. And so you make the person feel understood. So that's the first step in crisis management, it sounds like to me, is making the people feel that they were heard, and you're not going straight into defense, which doesn't ever work in a relationship or in a related area, right?
It doesn't, does it?
Doesn't work, everybody.
And you have to, and when you're wrong, right? So, I keep going back to United just because I happen to show you that example, although there are so many examples. But sometimes you just need to own it. And the thing is, if you're a really good company, and if you've been good to your customers and good to the public, and if you have a great reputation, people are going to forgive you. People are going to give you grace when you're a good company and you mess up and you immediately own it. Now, if you're somebody who hides and misleads and lies, then you're going to be crucified. And that's one thing really that I just insist with my businesses. I'm like, never, ever, ever lie. Don't blame other people. Right. Look into it, say we're investigating, do investigate, and then share those results with people. Because that's so important, because maybe the protocols were wrong, and maybe policies should change. If in the end nothing should change, well, that'd be a surprise, right? But there can always be a lesson learned. And if you share that with people, if you're transparent, then I think they appreciate that, and they're forgiving, because who doesn't make mistakes in this world, right?
Exactly. You're human. And as soon as anyone acknowledges and responds and apologizes and the other person feels seen, it could be dropped. So, wow, this has been so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing like your expertise on this. So we're just going to wrap up now. Deborah, is there anything you're working on right now? Is there any courses? Is there anything that people should know about for your website? I've just posted in the comments your website, the jacktracymarketing.com, for people to get in touch with you. So if you can just share if there's anything else you would like to let people know about that you're doing, and feel free to just promote away. This is your
Okay, well, so I do have many, many clients that we promote. And so if you're looking for somebody who wants to promote your business and get you on the news, and then your only job is to show up and take the phone call and give the interview, or be on the news, we can do that for you. We can also teach you how to develop relationships with reporters and to get yourself on the news. You can do it. It's easy. As I said earlier, if you don't want to spend all the time trying to track down those reporters, which in my opinion is the hardest part, then we can sell you a list of exactly the right reporters who to pitch, depending on your market and your needs and desires. But what's really cool, Leslie, is I'm one of those lifelong learners, and I know you are too. I can just see it from everything you're doing. But right now I'm learning a whole bunch about AI and how I can use that to better market people than ever before, faster, more widespread. And so that's super exciting. And another aspect of my business that I'm expanding now is sustainability. To me, our Earth and our planet is our future, and it's everything. And businesses that are being sustainable, whether it's with recycling, whether it's reusing, whether it's not using pesticides when they grow something, whatever part of their process is that they are being sustainable, I think is a great thing to promote. I think it's just so important, and it's going to become more important every single day as our climate changes and as we get these more severe weather storms that really, damage our lives and disrupt everything. I think we need to reward and promote businesses that are being sustainable and helping this earth. So if you're interested in that, that is a new area that we are going into, because I really see it as the future and a critical one. In fact, the most important thing I can think of right now for the future for a business is to promote their sustainability.
Oh, I love that. You're right. It's become incredibly essential, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
makes me think of my own business, because I'm a manufacturer, of course, and I manufacture mostly in Asia. One thing I've always been very focused on and proud of with my business is that I work with very small, mostly family-owned companies there. But there's always issues, dyes, and pollution and all that kind of stuff. So I love that you're bringing that to the focus, and everyone who owns a business, and whatever it is, should be really reflective of what they're doing and how they're affecting the world. So I love that, Deborah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and and it's not just me and our age. I think I'm a Gen X, like you are, but our children care about it, right? So that's the future. So if you're a business and you want to be selling to younger people, they care. I go to the grocery store, and if a pasta sauce says that there's no sugar and no tomato paste in it, I'm going to buy it. And if another one, a coat, I just bought some coats for Christmas. They're all by this company, I think it's Bernini, and they're all recycled, and they're beautiful coats, right? So I know me and my friends, we're all looking for that. And if it's going to be between you and another guy who I purchased from, and if you're the one saying, hey, look, our coats are made from recycled material, or this and that, or if we don't use any pesticides on our food, it's not just me, it's our children and the kids. I mean, so many, I have a 17-year-old son, and he and his friends go secondhand shopping all the time. And I asked them why, and they said, Mom, we don't believe in fast fashion. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what fast fashion is, right? It's the disposable products. It's stuff that people just throw into the landfills, which completely harms our environment and our air and our water. It seeps into our water. I mean, there have been so many movies and documentaries about this. So I think that that's the future for businesses. If like you can tell people that you work with families, that this is handmade, or even made from recyclable things, I think it gives you a huge edge over any other business.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, Deborah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom, your expertise. And everyone, check out Deborah, check out her website. It's right now in the comments. And thanks once again, Deborah, for being here. So everybody, thank you for being here on She Rises. Again, head over to 7keys-to-7figures book.com and grab the bonuses. They're not going to be up for much longer. And I will see everybody on the next She Rises. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Deborah. Bye.